to what will be the last Policy and Resources Committee before the summer recess, and we've got a full agenda of business today, so I'll just carry on. Can I have a Sederunt apologies, please?
Thank you, Leader. 19 members present. One apology from Councillor Diggle.
Okay. Any declarations of interest? No. The item 3, minute of the meeting, the 21st of April. I'm happy to move.
Second.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's just, is there any update on the obtaining the legal opinion regarding the potential success of the judicial review under the first item, which was the Local Government Boundary Commission?
We'll get back to you and see what I like. Can you? Right, okay.
Yes, we, through East Renfrewshire leading, and have commissioned Council's opinion and moving forward on the basis of that. As soon as we receive the first information, I'll circulate it to all members.
Okay, moving on to item 4, which is a Corporate Revenue Outturn report. The report gives members an overview of the Council's financial performance for the year ending 31st of March 2015. Members will note that the funding available to transfer to the Change Fund is £1.849 million, and as indicated in paragraph 3.2, that's over £500,000 greater than was initially expected. Appendix 3 provides the details of the use of the Change Fund. I think this is a very positive outturn position, which has to be set against the very significant challenges that services across the Council face and have addressed in the last year. In particular, the social work services have successfully addressed budget pressures, and the result of the social work budget has contained spending within agreed financial allocations. I acknowledge the excellent council tax collection levels achieved in the last financial year, and this has been supplemented by the introduction of the additional council tax in long-term equity properties. Before opening the discussion up, I would just want to emphasise the points made in paragraph 7 of the report, and in particular the need for the Council to respond flexibly to the impact of the UK and Scottish Government cuts in relation to the public spending levels. We very much would emphasise that an agreed 3-year budget provides a sound base from which to address these very significant challenges, but we still have a great deal of work to do in relation to specific savings. No member should be in any doubt that there are no quick fixes or easy solutions to the challenges we face, no matter how populist and attractive it is to be seen to be against making difficult decisions. I'll ask Paul if there's anything to add. No, I'll open up to members. Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. Let me make it clear, sir, I have no intention of, and particularly in the back of your remarks, of sort of trying to damn anything with faint praise. However, I would query whether or not the way that we're proposing to deal with the issues pertaining to CCS and also PES are sending out the right message. And making the point, Leader, I would accept entirely that PES have been subject to a late deterioration on income levels, and that is something which is totally demand-driven and which ultimately they cannot be in a position to influence. What I would have to say, Leader, is that the CCS situation, as far as I'm concerned, is somewhat different from that, in that it has essentially been a failure to manage activities in such a way as to meet the savings predicated. Now, I do appreciate that there have been difficulties as part of the ongoing process. I've been well aware of that from a ward member context. But as I say, sir, I'm not entirely comfortable, that that's sending out the correct message. Having made the point, Leader, I would be the first to admit that this department will now be under new stewardship, for want of a better term, and I would not want to see this committee today giving the incoming director any more difficulties than he otherwise will face by refusing to accept what Mr Garrett is suggesting. But as I say, I think the point needs to be made. I trust I've made it, sir, It's not necessarily the right message to be sending out to departments at the end of the day who cannot meet the savings, which have been predicated and expected of them, Leader. I'm grateful to you.
Okay, another member? Ivor?
Chair, I'll try and phrase this question so that I'm not looking to be populist.
So you won't change then?
It's to do with regard to page 15. We have the allocated and committed funds. Now, I've received numerous requests with regard to equal pay, and there's a provision in there of 2.270 million. My understanding of the advice that we get is the people who are contacting us under law don't have the right to appeal because of the time bar. But would that be an opportunity if there was a mechanism where people felt, I think the claim is a moral responsibility to actually award something? Would that be a possibility within underneath that heading of 2.270 million? And the other wee question was like, the waste PFI, we took a big chunk out of there. Are we confident that the sinking fund there will be sufficient to actually make sure we cover our costs in future years?
I'll ask Paul to deal with the sinking fund first, and then I'll bring Gavin in.
In terms of the waste sinking fund, a full review of the sinking fund will be brought forward to the EI committee following the recess, but the amount there is in line with previous projections that have been presented to the EI committee in the past. We're monitoring that closely. There's no change from previous projections, so that's fully in line. It's not a lower amount than we've previously projected there, so there's no problems there at the minute. As I said, we're closely monitoring that with the Director, and we'll bring forward the report to that committee following the recess.
Gavin?
I think for absolute clarity, the Council has no legal power to make such payments.
Okay, Billy?
Yeah, Chair, I note what you said in regards to the social work, and indeed it's correct, as we have here before us, that it has come within balance, a balanced budget. But nevertheless, Chair, I have serious concerns, and it's one that I will raise through the Service Committee in terms of the services to vulnerable people, which is a priority of this Council. And indeed, aligned to that is the sickness record within social work, and sometimes the replacement of those and the resources that are left weak, if you like, or reduced in the localities. So while I note what you're saying, I have reservations in terms of the level of service being provided to very vulnerable people, from children onward, and we'll note that what you're saying and keep an eye on that for the forthcoming year within the service provision.
Thank you, Leader. It's just on page 14, the statement about the savings targets, really upcoming financial year, 1.907 million, below the 3 million that we hope to have set aside. And it does say that there'll be monitoring reports brought back to the committee. I just wondered if we had any time scale for that, when we'd get the next update on that particular issue.
There'll be monitoring reports brought back to each meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee. The £1.9 million is not unusual for this stage of the financial year. We always take opportunities to top up the change fund as we go through a financial year. One of the things we're doing at the minute is reviewing all service reserves to see if there's opportunities to further increase the amounts available within the change fund. We did that this time last year as well, and there's opportunities there to put further money into the change fund. We're doing that again at the moment, so we hope to release further funds so there's further monies available for investment and savings going forward. So I'm not concerned that there's only 1.9 million there available at the minute. I think there'll be further opportunities to top that up as we go through the upcoming financial year.
Okay. Thank you. I have one other question, and it's really it's to do with equal pay again, but it's just because on the paper it says they're allocated committed funds. So can we just be clear that that 2.270 million, is that allocated committed funds, or is it a balance that's sitting in reserve? I just want to be clear on that.
They're specifically set aside for that purpose, so they're not available for members to allocate to any other purpose at this stage until we have fully assessed the extent of our liabilities for those particular purposes that are set down.
So it can only be used for equal pay at the moment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, it's Ian and then Ivor.
Thanks, Leader. Just in regards to recommendation 2.3, and it refers to the £1.907 million there that's unallocated. I'll be a wee bit parochial here because I know there's other members within the same ward, but we've got a real pressure in Annandale South in regards to the integration of library services, community customer services and that. And I just want to, before we go forward, because members have got the four local members have got a discussion to have, that 1.907 million, I take it that can be used to advance the interests of the local members, because we're finding it very difficult. We've got a proposal in front of us that all four of us are not entirely in agreement with. There's a funding deficit there that we're really struggling with. It's reassurance that funding could actually be used to address a problem like that.
It's my understanding there is an agreed process, but I'll let Paul.
I'm not sure of the particular pressure that Councillor Colours is referring to, but as the leader says, a specific process for utilisation of the Corporate Change Fund. There's not a proposal to utilise the Change Fund on the table today, but there'll be reports coming back to Policy and Resources later on in the financial year for the Change Fund, but there's specific requirements in terms of how the Change Fund can be used.
Okay, can we go to the... Oh, sorry, Ivor.
It's hopefully a quick one. 5.2 on page 9, we've had an increase in local taxation through increased payments and additional properties. It does say that at the start of the new year we would get a further review. Are we any further forward with that figure, and is it a significant change or not too much?
Intending bringing a report back to the next meeting of this committee after the recess on that. We upped the budget for our council tax shield by £600,000 for financial year 2015-16. I think there's a wee bit more than 600,000 there. I wouldn't want to put a figure on it at this stage, but I think there is a wee bit more, and I'll come back to the next meeting with that figure.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 1, 2, 3 and 4? Okay. If we can go to item 5, I'm pleased that the annual governance statement has, in the first instance, been fully considered by the Audit and Risk Management Committee. This approach helps to ensure the statement is an open and honest self-assessment of the Council's performance. The statement highlights the foundations that have been established in the last year, particularly the reshaping of the Council to provide a better focus on customer and communities, whilst at the same time a more streamlined management structure. The member involvement through the Business Transformation Steering Group provides opportunity for members and trade unions to scrutinise the change programme. This is consistent with the principles of good governance and my commitment to lead the Council in a way that is open and inclusive. I'm sure all members will be pleased to note our external auditors, PricewaterhouseCoopers, at paragraph 4.2, have assessed the Council's overall governance arrangements as appropriately structured with the necessary reporting arrangements in place. In the last year, as a Council, we have faced a number of challenges, including welfare reform and health and social care integration, and we can demonstrate a good corporate approach to managing these challenges. In particular, our response to the critical joint inspection in April last year of services for children, young people and families is very encouraging. Paragraphs 5.4 and page 37 highlights the report published by the Care Inspectorate, which indicates that along with our strategic partners, good progress has been made across all the main areas for improvement. I know all members are determined to maintain progress in this vital service activity as it goes to the heart of the Council priority to protect the most vulnerable people. I'm sure members will also welcome the conclusion outline in paragraphs 6.1 and 6.2, with particular reference to the principles of good governance and the behaviours of all elected members and officers, and I, for one, certainly place an importance on upholding these principles. I'll open up the meeting for member debate. Ivor?
Chair, if we look at the governance statement, paragraph 5.5, there is continuing correspondence with, I think it will be with regard to this issue from members of the public. Can you, or the Chief Executive, give us assurance that that we are within our remit of doing our governance on that situation and that there is no issue with that?
Yes, the report will be brought back. The recommendations that are presented to the Social Work Committee are being implemented, and council processes are being followed in resolving the outstanding complaints. So, and any recommendations on those will be brought forward to the appropriate committee if required.
Jill?
Thank you, Leader. As Chair of Audit and Risk, this particular issue was brought up at the Audit and Risk Committee, and because of the ongoing situation, we felt that it was appropriate that it was mentioned in this statement, and I think it is an appropriate mention.
Can we approve the annual governance statement? Okay, moving on to item 6, which is a corporate capital investment strategy. This report gives members details of the financial outturn position for the Council's capital investment strategy for 2014-15. Members will have received a separate paper with the appendices which were omitted from the original papers. As members will see, the total net capital spend for the past year was £39 million, making a significant contribution to improving the infrastructure across our region, but also in supporting our priority of building the local economy. To have spent over 99% of the agreed funding available is a very strong performance, and just shows how far we've come as a council when it comes to dealing with issues such as slippage in our capital programme. This should give us the confidence and reassurance that the council's agreed capital programme for the next 3 years, along with the indicative 10-year capital investment strategy, will be fully delivered, and even where changes are required, for example, if external funding is not secured, we have the flexibility to adapt the strategy. I'm also pleased to note that of the £1 million set aside in the budget for planned preventative maintenance, 91% of the work was carried out by local contractors. Paul, have you anything to add to the report? No? Members?
Thanks, Leader. Just to pick up on your last point there, I'm actually delighted to see that high percentage with local contractors, and obviously if it was appropriate we'd aim for better, but that has to be appropriate. I'm actually really pleased to see this is actually a fruition of a longer term strategy. It's not something that's happened overnight. We've been working towards it for some time, and I think that needs to be recognised. Thank you.
Okay, can we note 1, 2, 3, 4, oh sorry, I didn't see it.
My apologies.
Sitting to my left.
It's a minor question. It's Appendix 6, sir, paragraph 2.5. We're talking about broadband small works. Delays in the rollout are due to Openreach being unable to complete surveys at a number of sites within the timescales originally proposed. Can we get any further information on that, sir? Because the reason for my question is, and I'm sure other members in other more peripheral wards will probably be experiencing the same issue. There's a groundswell of opinion and frustration, particularly in the more rural parts of the mid-Galloway ward. People want to know where they are in the process, what's holding things up. And let me say, in making the point that council's officials, and particularly a certain James Pocock has been of tremendous assistance in resolving an awful lot of issues. But it would really be helpful, in my view, at least, to get some background information as to why that should be the case, Chair.
Right, I'll let Gavin in this. I've got an idea why it is, but
It's a national skills shortage. In delivering this contract, which is the largest contract that BT hold, there just aren't enough engineers in Scotland and in Britain, and in fact in Europe. Given the scale of the rollout of the national programme in the UK, even today, just to give members assurance that an advert is going in the press today looking to recruit 120 engineers for British Telecom. They've been relying heavily on imported skills from Europe. A decision was taken at last Strategic Management Board that was unacceptable for Scotland, and we wish that to be permanent BT employees. So the advert has actually gone out today. So the question is quite timely, Councillor Geddes. So it's 120 posts were required to be built to complete the Scottish Government contract. So it is a real national skills shortage. One of the things that we're also looking to do is, obviously, this is in new and emerging technologies, is to build, through Skills Development Scotland, appropriate courses in our colleges to bring through Scottish qualified engineers. There's a lack in Scotland of appropriate qualifications that we can rely on. So we are taking progress, and in fact I'm attending the National Board meeting tomorrow, in which I will raise your concerns.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's Appendix 3, it's the priority projects asset class updates. On the second page, economic development, a slight acceleration of spending. Says the main reason for the increased spend was due to higher than anticipated spend on projects. One of them includes the Stranraer Slipway. Could I have details of what the increased spend was? And as a member, I haven't heard of an increase in spend over what had been previously reported.
My understanding is, and maybe the wording is not particularly great there, it's acceleration of spend rather than an overall increase in cost. It's acceleration from next year's planned spend into 14-15.
Okay, Billy?
Yeah, Chair, it's reference to 2.18 in terms of the contaminated land at Stranraer. I presume this has to do with the land that was once occupied by the gasworks. It's really just to ask if that's almost, it says it's the work is now largely complete. When we'd be in the position to know exactly what the outcome of that work has been, because there is an interest in that particular land. And the other part is...
Sorry, Councillor Scobie, which page is that?
Pages on the number, Chair. It's 2.18 in the supplementary paper.
For all members, it's Appendix 5 of
Yep,
the
Appendix
paper
5.
that was appended. Paragraph 218, the last paragraph, members.
If we're near completion and ready to report on that particular piece of land. And the other part is a reference to Ashwood House, Chair, where there's, again, a considerable amount of money has been spent on Ashwood House. Whether it's been value for money is a further question that we've asked for a report at the area committee, but this one has further monies to be spent in Ashwood House in the refurbishment. Again, the area committee has asked for a further report on Ashwood House and other buildings, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. In terms of Ashwood House, the Area Committee did take a view in terms of the wider asset management planning arrangements in Wigtonshire, and this will be the subject of a report to this committee after the recess.
Right, we'll get that information back to you about contaminated land. If nobody here, I mean, this is yeah, it's financial, but I know that we'll get a report back to you. Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Okay, if we can go to item 7, which is proper building non-schools land and ICT building non-schools systematic class capital programme. This report outlines the proposed asset class capital programmes for the next 3 financial years in asset classes which this committee has responsibility for, namely non-schools, property, land and ICT. As members will see, each appendix provides detail of the funding allocations. Derek, are you taking this? Or Liz? Liz? Stephen there as well, is it? And Graham. Yep. Okay, members. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's really just as a follow-on to the last question for Councillor Scovey. I take it in Appendix 2, page 48, the 82,220 that's available for this year, 15-16 contaminated land, that's where the remediation money for any work that would need to be done in the area of land in Stranraer would come from.
Leader, just to help out, that's my clear understanding, and we'll verify that position to members after the meeting. And my apologies for the officer who should have been here not being here. My sincere apologies. Thank you.
No other member? Jane, sorry.
Thank you. It's on the same, it's note 1 to Appendix 2, and it's just, I need some assistance. I see that there is to be some fitting of rabbit fencing around the boundary wall in Kirkcudbright Cemetery. How, where, who, etc. decides that, whether that's a good use of money? Where do we do that? I see the money is being applied here, but whether it's the right thing to do.
So, yes, that's the request that's come through. There have been several complaints regarding rabbits, specifically within Kirkcudbright, and I think it's a case of trying to make the cemetery as rabbit-proof as we can in that particular instance, as best as we can.
I'm afraid I just wonder whether that's really, really going to be effective. I mean, you know, Australia couldn't manage it, so why the heck we should? I don't know. Yes, I think Australia applied more resources to it, though. I'm okay. So that's being done as an officer operation. Is it an officer decision?
Yes. Thanks, Vera. Right, Jim and then John.
Thanks, Leader. Were the high humidity issues at the Lowerburn Hall anticipated before the building was brought back into community use?
Chair, the initial anticipation at Lowerburn Hall was that the gym equipment and so forth would not be in there for such a prolonged period of time, but clearly with the situation in relation to DG1 and getting that resolved, the gym is occupying it longer than anticipated. The use of the space and the build-up of heat, particularly in external conditions that are quite warm, and the kind of moisture-based activities that happen in a gym is what's causing the problem. It's not something that would be anticipated for normal use of the hall for community purposes. So we're doing something to attempt to alleviate that over the next year.
Okay, John, are you wanting in?
No, no,
Is it
thank
about
you.
kangaroos or rabbits? Or?
I was just going to say, if if the rabbit fencing works at Kirkcudbright, then every cemetery will want rabbit fencing.
Okay, right. Ivor?
Maybe put rabbit boxes in, we could sell the rabbits, enterprise and council. With regard to 317, the ICT spend to save projects, they were reported last November. Have we started on those? I'm very interested in the first one, which is the thin client.
Yeah.
The simple answer to that is yes, we have. We're currently undergoing 3 separate pilots of different types of thin client to see which one's most suitable for the council infrastructure.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree recommendations 1, 2 and 3? Okay. Right, moving on to item 8. This report updates the members on the Kirkcudbright Art Gallery project and seeks approval for the business plan. Members will note that the business case is built around developing a gallery of national significance, and this has been a council priority project for the last few years. I'm sure members will be encouraged to note that option 3 was presented to the Heritage Lottery Fund in April this year, and the indications are that it was very positively received. I think the level of investment members have already agreed and will be asked to consider adding to today shows a significant level of commitment from this council to investment in Kirkcudbright. We've got Richard here to answer any questions. Members? Ivor?
Chair, happy to see this going forward. I'm just wondering, we weren't successful, I think, with the archive centre. Have we taken lessons from that so that we make sure that when we put our stage 2 in, we're actually there and we'll get funding? Have we taken something out of that process to actually put forward to this one?
Have lessons been learnt?
Simple answer through you, Leader, is yes. The discussions we've had with HLF have been very positive, and that's reflected in the design and the request to members today.
Okay, Andy?
Thanks, Leader. Our group are happy to support this initiative as well as a development of the art gallery, and the issue of the Viking hoard is actually added value to it, and we would also be suggesting that we would require the high level security for some of the visiting art exhibits which will be coming anyway. It's probably arguable that we should have had those in place before we got the Monet exhibition. We were lucky we got away with that one, I think. So this group are happy to support.
Rob?
Thanks, Leader. I'll be very brief here. I'm immensely supportive of this. Simply wanted to make the point as regards the Viking hoard. While I think it would be a major score to secure it for the region, the facilities that it would require for its safe display and its safekeeping would also be immensely useful were we to look at other arrangements with National Museums of Scotland, for example, to get hold of some of their exhibits on a loan basis. They do owe us one, I think, after Chambly, and the Leader will remember that there was at least an indication that they were prepared to be accommodating with us. The issue they had was that we didn't necessarily have anywhere suitable for some of the high-value stuff that they actually have. I've always had it in mind, for example, that given the amount of artifacts, very, very high-value, very interesting things they have, which they are not able to display, it would be immensely beneficial for us to have an agreement with them. For example, if we don't get the Viking hoard, that we have access to some of the collections they have, which are not on display, because clearly anyone with an interest in them then has to come to this region and spend their money here in order to see them at all. It would be an offer that nobody else in the country was able to replicate, and I think would be a good thing for the region. So very supportive of that, and particularly the increased security that would be associated with the Viking hoard, whether we secured that particular exhibition or not. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Jim.
Leader, I would support that plea from Councillor Davidson. and in particular with the regard to Wigtown area, I would hope that some of the many artefacts found in connection with the construction of the Dunragget bypass could be returned to Wigtown area for permanent display.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'm going to make my position perfectly clear. I fully support this as well. However, there is one little question I have. It's regarding the recommendations at 2.3. It says, note the council requires to confirm the capital allocation. Do we not actually have to confirm the revenue allocation as well? And I was wondering why there was nothing in the papers that actually notified us of the ongoing revenue costs over and above what we already spend, considering in September last year when it first came to this committee, it was 27,000 was ongoing. In the budget, it rose to 50,000. And at last week's CCS, we were informed that it's now going to be 59,500.
Thanks, Leader. Through yourself, my understanding is that the revenue implications of the project were approved as part of the full business case at CCS committee on the 16th of June.
Okay. Other members? Can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 1, 2, 3 and 4, agree 5 and 6, and note 7? Okay. Okay, item 9, this is Chief Executive Service Revenue Budget, the Outturn report. This report gives members the final budget outturn position for the Chief Executive Service budget for the last financial year. I'm pleased to note that the positive financial position with an underspend of £41,000. But as there is an underspend, and this of course is entirely due to the strong political leadership from members. Had there been an overspend, then of course that would have been entirely due to officers. On a serious note, I acknowledge the strong position has been achieved by the staff and clear direction from the Service Director and Heads of Services. I'll open up the meeting to members. Can we go to the recommendations then? Can we note 1, 2 and 3? We go to item 10, which is the end-of-year assessment of business plan. This report provides members with an end-of-year progress on the Chief Executive Service business plan. It also provides detailed information on the department's performance in relation to health and safety. In overall terms, the business plan contains 44 key performance indicators and 20 projects, with the majority of these met and within acceptable limits. The details of areas where performance targets have not been met are contained with the exception reports at Appendix 2. Appendix 3 provides a summary of the department's performance in health and safety, and I note that 91% of activities are either complete or on target. Got Lorna here to answer any questions. Can I open up to members? Jeff?
Just page 77, the annual performance development review. I mean, this has been raised quite frequently, you know, the need to actually have 100% of staff, particularly in a time of change like this. I would hope it's not the same 17% of staff who aren't getting the annual performance review each year? You know, at least if they miss one year, they get the next year. Can we actually have assurance about that?
One of the areas members will recall from November when we brought up our 6-month report was a dip in the performance during the year. Within the service, we've made great strides in terms of delivering on that. We have looked at 2 services in particular, DG First and social work services, where there has been some issues, and also education, and have put in plans in place for the recovery of that position. Unfortunately, that's not rose by the end of the 31st of March, but certainly those positions are being recovered as we speak, and the changes in social work are also being factored into that to make sure the reporting arrangements for staff are there, and their new managers or their reallocated managers are delivering those performance reviews.
Ivor.
Chair, a couple of points. The unit cost per creditor invoice paid, we see from that that it's gone up slightly, but it's to do with the e-procurement. Now, that came through scrutiny and performance. Have we amended the rules so that we can act, the standing order, so that we can make e-procurement more? That's the way we will follow, so that we don't have as many creditor invoices to deal with. And the other one was with regard to the accommodation not suitable for its current use. Understanding was we were reducing the accommodation we have. I would have thought if we were getting rid of buildings that weren't suitable, the ones that we were using were suitable, and I would have thought that would have went up a bit.
In terms of e-procurement, one of the areas we've been investing in, as members will know, is around integrating the financial systems. We're now looking at joining that up fully with the procurement system, PCOS. We still have some manual invoices coming into the service, and that's what's driving the costs in terms of handling bits of paper, and it's a cost to the suppliers themselves as well in terms of providing those invoices. Members were very clear in terms of that review through Scrutiny Committee about the need to ensure that, if at all possible, most services and all services are using that area of the policy. We have now mandated that. We are working our way through a reduction in paper invoices with our suppliers, giving them support to move on to PCOS as far as possible, looking at e-invoicing with the Scottish Government, one of the pilots around that as well. Everything we can possibly do to reduce the cost, but also the convenience to the suppliers. And the great thing about using the e-procurement system is that suppliers are generally paid more quickly because you're matching the orders and the invoices at the point of order. So it's a benefit all round, and that's certainly where we've been focusing our time, and we expect that figure to drop this year. In terms of the buildings, in terms of the suitability, one of the things we need to look at, and its current use, is around the way we assess that, but also the reduction in the number of properties that we have, the fewer and better assets position that members have set us. That's part of the Dumfries asset plan, the asset management work that will be brought forward to this committee later this year, and also some work we'll do with members through September, October in terms of the plans for that, the principles for that, the opportunities we have with the health service around some of that, but also the impacts and the mitigation and support for those properties that perhaps we no longer need or can use, and what we can do with communities around them and their alternative usage as well. So a whole programme of that is underway. That will really allow us then to invest in the property that we retain, and therefore raise its suitability for its current use and apply our investment and maintenance into those properties.
Okay, Jane.
Well, it follows on from that, actually. I mean, because we have been slow to get on with these particular plans, we've then not been able to sell property and make the savings that we want to, which of course immediately has a knock-on effect on the savings that we have to make. So really what I'm asking, I think, Leader, is that in the resource implications, on page 82, with regard to the proportion of operational accommodation, there is a suggestion that there hasn't been sufficient capacity to scrutinise these, and I'm really asking why is that going to be any different in the future?
We've put in a number of resources in to work with property and architecture services. We're working with the Scottish Futures Trust and Scottish Government. We're working with the NHS as well now and some other local agencies to put money together to look at some opportunities for shared accommodation. But we've also put in resources from the whole of the Chief Exec Service around additional business support, administration, to free up the professional staff to get on with their work, and also looking at the professional skills. Some of the graduates have been applied to this area of work as well. So a whole range of resources are being applied, have been applied, and will continue to be applied. This is an absolute priority for the department and the council this year to move this forward, Jane. So absolutely.
Willie?
Thanks, Ronnie. Page 89, under the exceptional reports, where, you know, from 2012-13 up to 2014-15, there has been a gradual improvement, which I note, but still we are not hitting even the 90% target, which still means that 10 in every 100 will not be attended within time, and that's still, in my opinion, something that we should be addressing. But putting that to the side, we are still not meeting that target. And in the improved action plans, other than the efforts we'll continue to make to broaden the network, could you give us maybe some examples of what practical steps are being taken to improve the efficiency and performance? Because behind every inquiry, in the main, there is a person waiting on an answer. And I ask a further question in terms of the average number of days lost, and reference to the absence increasing to some over 4%. And I just wonder if there's any correlation with performance and absence in terms of perhaps stress and so forth, and whether practical steps are being taken. And again, perhaps to the Chief Executive, as to, you know, when these performances aren't being met, what steps are being taken to ensure that steps are being taken to meet the performance targets.
Lorna?
In terms of EMES within the Chief Exec Service, again at the 6-month review, members raised the performance of this department around that. I think we were sitting round about 70% there. We've taken some significant steps in terms of the distribution of the requests from members to make sure they're handled properly. In the last quarter of this year, and it's included in these figures, we're now at 92% within timescale. My aim is to get that to 100%. So we've made some inroads in that, and that's about the better distribution of the calls. So that network of team has already been established within the service. A much quicker handover of the requests and a chase up of those. So that's been a significant change in the last 4 or 5 months. In terms of sickness absence and correlation with stress, there's been significant discussions with the trade unions through the Joint Safety Committee around matters to do with sickness absence and also stress at work. The sickness absence levels are generally driven by other ailments rather than stress at work. Stress at work is a very small part of the overall sickness absence within the council or within the department particularly. But that's not to be complacent, and there's a different paper on this committee to look at the mentally healthy working lives and the support for that, and also the development of managers to recognise those signals and to be able to act on them at earlier stages. So we recognise that within this, but certainly it's not a correlation, particularly around those figures.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's page 85, the percentage of calls resolved. It's nice to see that we're above target. However, when you look at the last 3 years, I think perhaps, not so much as a question as an observation, perhaps we actually reduced the target prematurely, considering we're now above target, and we're even above target of the previous years before we actually reduced the target. Obviously, there was a performance review going on and a different way of operating. Perhaps we should have waited to see after that review had been done before we actually reduced the target.
Just to give you some additional information, we're reviewing the target, as we said, in terms of this year to make sure that it's a stretch target. It has to be in terms of delivery, but also we benchmark against other local authorities across the whole of the UK and within Scotland as part of the Socketum arrangement, and some of the benchmarks that we have been using are the benchmarks that they set. So it was given as a comparative information, but we've recognised that we are now beating that and we need to put better targets within that.
Patsy?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at page 87 and 88. It's to do with the stage 2 complaint responses, which, if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't think the target's set very high at 80%, but we're sure as heck not meeting it at really very well in either of those either. We're at 40% on page 87 and 50% on page 88. But what I'm really wondering, I see the actions you're taking with handlers going in, and I hope that we'll see an improvement in that, because that would be good. But what I just kind of wonder, when you're reporting these things and everything else, you've always done 2012, 13, 2013, 14, there's been something there to compare. And it does say in both of those that the figures for this year, well, 14, 15, are better than 13, 14, but we don't have that information in front of us. And I just wondered what reason that was, whether it's a new way of reporting or...
Yeah, apologies if that line is a bit misleading in terms of it comparing to previous years. It's a new indicator, so we don't have anything to directly measure against. But of course, we have been reporting compliance with all complaints, stage 1, stage 2, those referred up to stage 3, which is up to the SPSO, or to the Complaints Review Panel for a number of years now. So although we're not quite comparing apples with apples, we are able to look at previous years generally and see and to compare back. So that's why it would be misleading for us to put in a bar chart for 12, 13 or 13, 14 to compare it, because last year we changed the indicator. So it's like a technical thing in terms of how we've changed the indicator. We've agreed previously that moving forward, what we're measuring now is more accurate, more indicative of the actual performance, and is a better indicator. So next year we'll be able to compare back to this year. And moving forward, I think this will give members better scrutiny of how we're handling the more complex stage 2 complaints.
I think to add to that, members, that most complaints are dealt with at stage 1 within time and at the front line with the services involved and the individual officers involved. Stage 2 complaints generally to obviously a dissatisfaction with that response, but tend to relate to quite complex issues. So the majority of the complaints within, for instance, the Chief Exec service are related to very complex complaints that relate to a number of other services and departments that we're having to deal with. Notwithstanding what we've put in here in terms of management intervention, improving how we deal with stage 2, part of the work that I'm doing with Martin just now is looking at the resources within the team and how we deal with complaints, the resilience of that team around some of these very complex matters, and how we look at how we manage the caseload around those areas, because those complex complaints, those difficult matters which relate to a number of services, are going to continue to happen for all local authorities and all public bodies. So we need to make sure that we're able to respond to them as far as possible within the expectations that the SPSO have set out.
I just would have to say that I thought this was a bit misleading, because you do refer to previous years and yet you don't give the information there. So that was why I was curious about it. Thank you.
John?
Just on the same point, we actually got the overall figures, which again the status was read with regards to last week at the CCS, and I think there was an overall 18 stage 2 complaints, which in itself is quite good that we've only got 18 complaints. But the reason that we were given across the service, and I hear what you're saying about them being complex within the Chief Executive Service, but the reason was that we didn't have a dedicated officer to actually look at these, and we were given the assurance that that is now going to be put in place. But I'm hearing from yourself, you're saying it's still under review.
I think it's two different things. One in terms of within the services, one of the things that we've asked directors have agreed to and we're putting in place is an officer, usually the business manager within the service, who acts as a coordinator to make sure those complaints are dealt with. So that there's a business element in terms of rigour applied to it. What I was referring to earlier is really around the central complaints team, who are actually the coordinators for complaints coming into the council, being able to make sure that the monitoring's there and also the case handling, particularly with the complainants themselves. So there's an issue about that management and that oversight and the capacity for that on those complex cases, but also putting the business rigour into the services. And so CCS were absolutely correct around their response, which is they're putting the resources within their business management team to be able to handle and coordinate the cases that come into their service more quickly and with more rigour.
Okay, Ian first, I think, is it? Ian? and then
Thanks,
John.
Leader. I think
Oh, sorry.
both my questions have been asked in regards to the stage 2 complaints and the calls being resolved. But I wondered in regards to, should we be looking at resetting the targets for the calls resolved? Should we be upping that as a target? Is this the appropriate place to do that? And the piece of information was missing from me after Patsy's question on the stage 2 complaints was what was the original 80% based on? What was that based on? We touched on some of it, but I'd just like to have a better understanding. You spoke about across the whole complaint service that came across, but obviously that fundamentally it is a new target, but that's still in 80% was a target based on something. What was that?
It's a straightforward percentage of the number of calls issued against the number of calls received. So the actual figures we're talking about are 36 out of 38 in terms of this year. Now, I've got that broken down, and if the council wants more information, I can give that broken down per department. And then within the annual report that went to Audit and Risk Management Committee last week, we've got the stage 1s, the stage 2s, and broken down again. And by looking at what we captured in terms of what went to Audit and Risk last week, you can compare back to previous years because you are comparing like with like.
John?
Martin, I think you've just stolen my thunder because this was the subject of a report at Audit and Risk Committee last week, the complaints process in particular, and we were given assurances at that time that there would be people put in place to make sure that we were capturing and dealing with the complaints in all departments, as in complaint handlers, as Councillor Marshall mentioned regarding CCS. So I think you've just stolen my thunder because we are expecting that to be put in place, and we will be looking forward to seeing a report coming back to Audit and Risk Committee.
Okay, can we go to the Jim McComb. Jim.
Thanks, Leader. Going back to page 82, the suitability of operational accommodation. Now, I note that this is a fairly subjective exercise, but my question is it done on a building-by-building basis, or is it done on a room-by-room basis? Because the quality of heating, ventilation, and lighting can vary substantially from one room to another.
If you're cold, Jim, just tell us.
Thanks, Chair. It's a fairly detailed assessment that the lead occupier of each building does, and it does take into account individual rooms. So it wouldn't be on the basis if there was 100 rooms, it would be 100 different gradings, but what that lead occupier's feeling is in terms of overall, say in terms of heating, decoration space and so on. So if, for instance, there is a particular issue that's in a room with overheating or insufficient heating, then that would be reflected in the ban that's put against it in the overall survey. We do try to put some objectivity into it through working with services and the property professionals and property and architectural services, but there's inevitably a little bit of subjectivity that comes in because people have different feelings that they have about heat and cold in particular.
Thank you very much. You've answered my query, Louise.
Okay, Andy.
Thanks, Leader. Just, I suppose, just to add to some of the confusion here, are we actually looking at the buildings that are roasting hot in the summer and the ones that are and at the same time are freezing cold in the winter, just purely because of the whole? I'm talking of personal experience here, where it's glass facing the sun all day in the summertime, absolute nightmare, and in the winter freezing cold because all the heat's going out the window. Are we looking at that in a different way rather than in general terms?
Yes, the short answer is yes, we are, particularly through looking at the whole of the building, because very often it's not just the case that one particular issue needs to be resolved. It can be a whole building issue. So we're revisiting condition surveys just now to see what we need to do to address some of those issues at properties where there are particular problems. Obviously keeping in mind that where properties may be vacated or planned to be vacated, we would seek to balance the amount of investment that might be made.
Can I come back in here? Yeah. Thank you. I'm hastening to add, I'm not talking about the SAP group room, although you could actually do some of that as well. But I'm talking about in my old day job. So can I also take from that then that where we've got a lot of glass, especially southern facing glass, we're looking at appropriate blinds that are actually going to protect the staff inside?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? We've reviewed 1, we've scrutinised 2, can we agree with that? And we've reviewed 3, and can we note 4? Okay. Yeah. Sorry?
We're just saying it's freezing.
Okay, can we move on to item 11, which is the Chief Executive Service Budget. This report provides members with details of Chief Executive Budget for 2015-16, along with the associated activity-based budgeting information. The inclusion of the details of the ABB information provides members with more detailed information about where the Council spends its money and for what purpose. I also welcome the indication that paragraph 3.4, the work will be ongoing to develop the ABB information to align the document to service business plans. Members therefore have a significant amount of information available to them to decide whether this is an appropriate budget for the department for the year ahead. Warner will take any questions. Members? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's page 103. That's the Appendix 2, really the first page of the ABB. A note at the bottom, it says budget estimates for 14-15 to 15-16 have moved, and it gives reason. However, I noticed the budget estimate for the organisational development and human resources 16-17 is 3.03 million, and then it drops to 1.9 million. Is there any really explanation for that? Because I'm quite sure somebody at some point is going to ask it.
As part of the training development work that was done last year, and also the shape of the council work, training development resources will go into the lifelong learning element of children, young people and lifelong learning. So we're hosting it for a year, working with Colin Grant to organise those services, and then they'll go across, and that's all of the training budgets for the whole council are involved in that.
Ivor?
Chair, I was just wondering where the 42,000 out the reserves for efficiency programmes, are they identified, or is this just going to be an ongoing reserve in the case that something comes up?
It's not reflected here. This is the in-year budget. It's part of the monitoring of the delivery of the in-year budget and the spend to date. Any use of reserves would be flagged there, so we would come back to members to see how we would intend to use that 42,000. At this point, It's not earmarked for anything specific, but we're looking at opportunities for spend to save particularly.
Jane?
I want to say thank you very much. You need good information here and benchmarking, and I'm sure we'll get our heads around it, but thank you for it. I just want to ask about the percentage of invoices being paid on time. Page 108, Leader. If I've got that right, I think it looks as if we are slipping and slithering. And are we putting the resources in to get that back up to where it should be?
That relates to the changes we've made to the systems in the last year with the new Integra system and then moving on to the PCOS electronic system. So we expect the level of payment to speed up considerably under PCOS, but also to reduce the number of manual payments as well, which again will help with that, both in terms of cost and speed. But you're absolutely right, the changeover process in the last year has been an issue, and we've put the resources in to deal with that.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? We've reviewed one. Oh, sorry.
Can I just ask, I think I'm probably missing something in here, but I just would quite like to know. It's to do with the Modern Apprentice policy funding allocated, and I just wonder, it's at 1.155 million and on page 102. How long is that to last, and how does it work? Could you refresh my memory?
Members agreed in the MA Plus scheme was launched now 3 years ago to put in £1 million per year in terms of cash, £5 million over the 5 years, and to use that cash reserve to hire 250 modern apprentices under that unique scheme, and each of those modern apprentices has up to 3 years work experience. So the first intake are finishing over the next year. Many of them have achieved positive destinations. The 250th modern apprentice has just been recruited, so there's still another 2 to 3 years of that scheme to go. So the money that's been used is being used to pay for all those modern apprenticeships, their training as well, and to smooth that over the period of the 5 years.
Good. So will we at some point see how that has worked as a project, you know, when it comes to completion, or will we just continue to, do you anticipate us just having as part of our budget for the foreseeable future?
Because we're at the way past the midpoint and we've recruited the 250, we have asked to engage an external organisation. We're going through the process of identifying a suitable organisation to carry out a full evaluation of the programme to date, what it's achieved, the destinations of the young people, the skills that they've achieved, all of those kind of questions that we want to really find out about and bring that back to this committee to take a view on, particularly in advance of setting budgets in future years.
Okay, Jill.
Lorna's just answered my question. I just wanted to get some feedback as to how the work had gone and the achievements of the modern apprentices and where they had finally ended up. I think it would be useful for the committee to see an evaluation process taking place and some feedback to the committee, and hopefully it will be positive.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? So Ian?
Just a quick one, Leader, thanks for that. It's page 144. I was trying to get an understanding of it's a valuation rule, and it says the number of subjects in valuation rule, and it goes into the figures. But when I read that, it looked to me like there was an increase between March 13 and March 14 on the roll, but a decrease in council tax coming in. Is that correct? And if it was, what would be the reason for that? Is it re-evaluations or what was that?
I'll get the assessor to give you a detailed answer to that. I think I would just be flying a kite if I tried to answer that.
Okay, we've got the recommendations. We've reviewed one. Can we note two? Yeah. Going to item 12, which is the mental health and wellbeing policy. This report seeks members' approval for the mental health and wellbeing policy along with the associated action plan. I'm personally committed to creating a positive, safe and healthy environment from which our staff can achieve the appropriate work-life balance and in turn improve productivity and performance. I think it's essential that we are committed to tackling the stigma associated with mental health illness, and I'm delighted that we have signed up to the See Me Pledge, which is a national programme to end that stigma. Paragraph 3.6 of the report provides a helpful overview of the key themes promoted in the policy, and Appendix 2 provides an action plan. Members? Andy?
Thanks, Leader. Obviously commend all the work that's gone into this. The only quick questions I've got are at 3.8 and 3.9 on page 170, where we're working towards the Gold Award and towards the kite mark. Have we got any idea of the timescale or a sort of progress of where we are exactly in that process?
Chair, yes, the Gold Award target is the end of October 2016. There's quite a bit of work involved in that, as you can appreciate. In terms of the carers policy and associated guidance, we're looking to have that work completed and brought forward to members in September of this year.
Thanks. I've been just building that. That's actually, I'm even happier that the progress and the way this whole thing is moving forward, Leader, and it's a credit to them.
Okay, Ian.
Actually, I agree with Councillor Ferguson's sentiments. It is a really good document. And my question, it's only one small question in regards to the appendix itself. It hasn't got a page, but it has, page 175, and it's 2.5, and it's about how the council managers, the level of training they'll get. I just want an understanding, and the bullet points are there, how they'll go through, what they'll be trained on. Just what will that training be like for the managers? Because obviously managers, it's a sensitive subject, to say the least, for our staff in regards to this. And it can be mental health problems, or sometimes mental health problems can be situational as well. So I just wondering what the level of training managers will undertake in this.
The level of training that we're currently developing is part of the blended learning strategy that we have. So there will be some classroom-based learning as well as some online learning. The abilities through the online learning is that we can push that through to all managers and supervisors to ensure that they actually get the relevant training, and that's a key commitment that we want to do. We're working very closely with NHS partners who are professional in that field, and they're helping our corporate development unit devise the training programme to ensure that we get the balance right in terms of giving the right information and giving managers the confidence to have those sensitive conversations, which they inevitably will have to have over the duration of their management time.
Yeah, something Gail whispered to me there. If the manager is under stress, will he pick up the stress coming from the people further below? Because eventually, if you work to the top of the tree, if Gavin has a bad day today, who's actually going to assess whether he's under stress?
I think there is an important point here, but I think it's everybody's responsibility. Everybody's responsibility to look after each other. And I don't know how many times in a workplace, symptoms aren't recognised, and where people have actually went, and had serious mental health difficulties in a, as the end term basis for that. It's the very simple things when you're looking at somebody and they say something that's maybe out of context, or their head's down about something, and you just ignore that. It's everybody's responsibility then to start trying to take that up. And it's a very difficult situation to actually recognise that, and nobody will get it right 100% of the time. But if you're actually looking for that, in stress situations in the workplace, I think it's very important that everybody has a part to play in that. Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we approve 1 and 2 and note 3? Item 13, which is the graduate programme review. This report provides an overview of the 2014-15 graduate employment experience programme. Paragraph 3.12 of the report provides a full list of the various placements in which the graduates were placed. I'm sure members will be delighted to note that the success of the programme, with all 13 graduates successfully finding work following participation in the programme, and also will note the geographic spread of the placements. Having attended the recent awards ceremony for the graduates and listened to the presentations, a number have been made on the projects, I have to say I'm hugely impressed by the talent that this programme has attracted and the contribution they have made to the work of the Council. Paul's here to answer any questions. Members? Gail?
Thank you, Leader. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend the awards ceremony, but it has been an enormously successful programme. We did highlight, I think last year or the year before, that 6 months wasn't enough. And clearly that period has been extended to 8 to allow them to sort of integrate into the department and then complete their work at the end. But at 3.19, it's sort of outlining that 3 have been successfully employed permanently, 2 within our council, another one within another local government. But then 2 contracts of 2 graduates have been extended to complete their project. So A, is the 8 months long enough now? And then it goes on to say that the other graduates have been retained within departments to take the projects further or carry out discrete pieces of work. Is that under a graduate sort of payment system, or is it under a temporary contract? Or because it seems to me that the 8 months clearly isn't long enough, and there's some merit in retaining an awful lot of these people afterwards. But are they being retained under HR policy as council employees or under a sort of extended graduate scheme?
Leader, it's very much under the contract, extending the contracts to give them further work experience, and we're very keen where we can facilitate that to do it. It's generally beyond the remit of the original project when that happens, and there were circumstances in the 2 projects identified that meant there were delays, no fault of the graduate, but it's clearly important that they get both the development and able to finish the projects themselves.
So just on that, is there a budget pressure? Is the 155,000 sufficient?
The 155,000 is adequate, and we're very much looking to source additional experience for the graduates on completion, and importantly that's taken place sometimes within the council.
I think, Chair, it's worth saying for those members who weren't able to make the awards that a particular example would be the waste project in schools. It was such a stunning success that the service were determined to keep them on so that they could take it to the next level. And I would say it's a fantastic example of bringing some talent into the organisation to point the blindingly obvious out. Another would be an example of extending the excellent work being led on undertaken in the anti-poverty strategy, when we had to retain the skills of this graduate to bring the report forward to full council. So in many ways the budget's sufficient because actually the talent is so good that the service has been more than willing to contribute to keep these people on as well. So I think it's an example of where it's been more successful than I could hope, and certainly I share the leader's views. When I saw some of the product, it really was inspiring of what they've been able to achieve in this time. Obviously, as Paul reflects in the scheme, we might wish to come with some slight revisions to it on the basis of this success, but it does show that we have some real talent, Dumfries and Galloway, within our region, and if we can retain more of it, it would be a far more successful region.
Ronnie?
Just on the back of that, Chair, I mean, I was at the presentation, I was very impressed, like we all were, with some of the projects that were being delivered. Personally, I think there's it's not hidden, but there'll be a tangible benefit to the council, the cost savings going forward with some of the work that we're doing. I mean, so the money we're talking about that would cost, I think will be repaid in time as we get more efficient and a spotlight shined in areas that's maybe never been shone in areas that's never been there before. So I think in the longer term, there'll be some real benefits to the council financially and in efficiencies.
Thanks, Leader. I can't see it in here. I'm just wondering the successful candidates that came through the recruitment process, what was the gender balance? The table on page 185, it was 9 and 4 as far as male and female.
9 male, 4 female.
That was exactly why I asked the question, Leader, because at first I thought that's what it was. My question was going to be, can they explain the gender balance? You know, or could we make a move to have this more gender equal? And is there a reason for it, you know, why we're sort of 9-4? I think we're obviously seeking to appoint on merit, and clearly the inputs. If you look at the number of applications received, and there tends to be a predominance of males applying and coming through the process. It's simply appointment merit. I don't get any impression that the basis of any of the opportunities available are skewed either one way or the other. Thanks. Can I come back in, Leader? Yeah. I'm a wee bit, I'm probably not reading this right, but at 3.10 there were 10 places, and then we get an extra 2 from the Health and Social Care Integration Funds. 10 and 2 to me was 12, 9 and 4 is 13. There were actually a number of opportunities that were first funded by the council, and those were 10 places. There were further projects identified following that, which we embraced within the overall programme. There being one in communications with the health service.
Okay. As I've said, I've been hugely impressed with the success of this programme, and you know, I think sorry, Andy, you what? John?
Sorry, I just want to ask a question, because you did say that we were keeping some of the graduates on, not to maybe complete work, but to do additional pieces of work because the work that they'd carried out had been of such value. In my opinion, we should therefore be looking at enhancing the money that we give them if we're keeping them on because they're doing an additional piece of work, and not, we shouldn't just be paying them at the graduate rate. I'm sorry, but that would be my take on it. I fully understand if they're completing a piece of work, they should stay at the graduate rate. But if we keep people on within the council to do an additional piece of work because the work of that value, the work they've done in the past has been of such value, then I think we should be paying them accordingly.
I haven't really identified that there is a disparity between what we're asking them to do as a graduate and what we've been asking subsequently. We can certainly look at that and be mindful of that.
I think that would be helpful.
We've got the recommendations. We've reviewed 1. Can we note 2? Thanks. Okay, item 14, which is the Dumfries and Galloway Council Advocacy and Lobbying Strategy. Still on the subject of our talented graduates, this report presents a new advocacy and lobbying strategy, which has to a large extent been developed by Joseph Kumbe, one of our graduate trainees. As a council, we are committed to delivering our priorities and commitments and making our region as successful as it can be, ensuring that our council receives the resources it needs to be able to deliver this is essential. By improving how we lobby on issues that matter to the people of Dumfries and Galloway, we will be more effective in getting the best deal and outcomes for local people. Over the past year, we have seen a number of our local services centralised nationally and local jobs being lost as a result. I'm committed to fighting for local people and making sure Dumfries and Galloway receives a fair share. But that means we need to take a genuine Team DG approach with everyone working together to fight a region's corner. In the past, it's been too tempting for some people to pitch one community in a region against another. And as a result, I believe Dumfries and Galloway loses out. We would do well to learn from other parts of Scotland, such as the Highlands and Islands. Unless we speak with one voice on behalf of the region, then there is less chance that our voice will be heard. I believe the policy before us will provide the basis for the promotion of our council's priorities and commitments. We need to be more effective in lobbying and advocating for our region, and paragraph 3.16 outlines the key things that we need to do to achieve this. In overall terms, the strategy aims to underpin the view that lobbying, advocating is everybody's business in the council, and the delivery plan to implement the strategy is included at Appendix 2. We've got Donna and Joseph present, and they'll deal with any questions on the report. Members? William?
Yeah, Chair, it's a document I've been waiting a considerable time for. Indeed, I've raised issues in the Social Work Committee, and I'll come to the point in a minute. It is something that we have to sharpen our focus on if our voices are to be heard in Dumfries and Galloway and more to the rural economy. I'm looking at this, Chair, in the document, and again, a pretty comprehensive document, and looking at page 205 under Appendix 2, where it states to ensure that we are more proactive and strategic in our lobbying, we need to identify and consider how emerging trends and developments might potentially affect current policy and practice. I relate that to, Chair, the page on 2009 in terms of what should we consider when developing our message, and to make sure that our asks can be achieved and that we can campaign more carefully and consider how best to deliver them. I make reference to it, Chair, and you have laid out in 3.16, but I would ask in 3.19 in terms of, in reference to my remark earlier, in terms of social work, where kinship carers, where there is, in my opinion, an inequality and a disparity. And I look at the document in terms of 3.9 in terms of a council communication plan is currently being developed and brought to the committee in autumn 2015. Throughout the report, and perhaps it can be answered, I do not see a reference to who actually takes the decisions in terms of is this an issue that we want to take forward as a lobbying issue, and who has responsibility? Is this policy and resources, or is it the service committee that has the remit to say we are taking this on as a lobbying issue, and then we will structure in line with the strategy and communication document as they come forward?
I think it's what we're trying to do with the lobbying strategy and the guidance that's in the document is put it into everyday business of the organisation. So it would sit within with the directors and their management teams to identify that through business planning. It would go to the service committee for approval through the business planning process. And ultimately it's for members to make that decision when they're agreeing the business plan, what the issues are for that service committee that ought to be lobbied on, what the priorities are for there. And part of the kind of overarching bit, I think, for this committee is the priorities and commitments, and then through to the service committees.
Yeah, could I go back and thank Donna for her answer there, but it seems to be that from what she described there, it was from the directorate to the business management and then to the members for decision. Does this work in the other way as well, in terms of the service committee, where members say that this is a lobbying issue, i.e. kinship carer, to what I'm not expecting an answer today, but, so that this can be taken back to a service committee and say, this now is a lobbying issue, and it can come from the members upwards rather than top down.
Absolutely. sorry, it wasn't meant to give you the impression of a one-way flow, but I think it's part of the day-to-day business of how members and officers work through the business planning process, and whether that's, you know, whatever way it comes, there's a dialogue to be had about what the issue is and what the message is and how it's taken forward.
Ian?
Thanks, Leader. It was a similar question to what Willie just posed, and I think a really good document. It's a first-class document, actually, but it's the bit that's missing for me is I felt there would be more emphasis on the members themselves, as the council as a corporate organisation, but, well, no, as the council themselves, the members, the full council. I thought there would have been a clearer channels in which they would be able to progress individual or corporately their views and what they should be lobbying on, whether it's economic, whether it's kinship care, whatever that may be, whether it's a higher level of funding from Scottish or UK government, Europe, in regards to roads infrastructure, stuff like that. And that was missing. It's very much about being proud of who we are, what we are as a council. Totally agree with that, right from the bottom to the top. That's the stance we should be taking. And that was just the piece that was missing for me in regards to this excellent document was where the members get involved at the highest level and how they progress that.
I'll take that on board. I think we thought we had managed that through the document in trying to make it a partnership and that it's members and officers working together. But if we've not succeeded in that, we can have a look at that if that's what you'd want us to do.
I think the one thing is that, you know, we as a council decide what our priorities are. We as a council decide what our commitments are, and it's getting ethos throughout the organisation where everybody sees opportunities. Everybody sees being an advocate, or maybe it needs lobbying activity to, you know, to achieve these commitments or achieve these policies that we set as council. Ivor?
Thank you, Leader. When the research was being done, was there anything as to when you should actually be starting your sort of lobbying activity? Because I always think that we seem to come to the table slightly later than we should. Rather than shaping what's coming forward, we're responding to what's already been put in place. And was that a common issue that came through the research done?
Yeah, I think it is. I think we naturally react to things. That has been our default position. I think we do have examples of where we have preempted things. If you go back a few years to the competitiveness strategy and how that was developed about defining ourselves and what we needed for our region with the advent of a new European programme. But that's almost unique in that approach and what we've taken, that we have come at things a wee bit later in the day. We respond to consultations, but part of what we're trying to say in the document is that in our day-to-day work, be you an officer or a member, we are working with officers at government level, with other politicians, MSPs, MPs, etc. We need to be braver, smarter, in knowing what our message is and having those discussions to preempt and feed ideas in. And people do that ad hoc, but it is a bit more ad hoc, and what we're trying to do is equip people to, one, know what the message is, what our area is, and give them the skills to take it forward, so that we can get a bit sharper on that, and that's what we're trying to do, I think.
Jane?
Thank you, Leader. You actually made the point for me. It's I think it's to do with our business plans. If we decide something in committee, then and we see an opportunity through business plans to go and advocate for these proposals, then I think that's the way that we should pick and choose what we really put resources into, suggesting into lobbying for. I thought this was a thoughtful and thorough and actually very well structured document, and I do commend it. I think it gives everybody clear guidance. We've not had, I think, a step-by-step proposal in the way that we have here. I do notice, comfortingly, that actually other councils have not done the work, seemingly, that has been done here. So I think this is that this will provide us with a useful set of tools, I think we should actually make a habit of going back and saying, did we do what was suggested? And that might be something that we actually might take as an example somewhere. I mean, dare I say it, we could think possibly through the next CCS committee that the Viking Horde should be lobbied for, and then we can take that forward as a practical, worked example, leader, from beginning to end.
If you've got the money, I've got the lobbying activity. Colin?
Visions of a bunch of councillors heading up to Edinburgh, pillaging for Viking hordes. I think, Chair, we're in danger a wee bit of kind of misunderstanding. I think what this I think excellent piece of work actually is all about. I think our lobbying and advocacy at present is very, very reactive. What we do is we pick a subject, and I think Willie's hit the nail on the head when he's kind of gone down that route again. We pick a subject, in this case kinship carers. We decide, right, that's a subject we're going to lobby on. We better now come up with a strategy to lobby on that. So we normally get a group of councillors together and we all wander up to a meeting with the minister, and that's it. And we get a report back and say that's us lobbied on that particular subject. When actually what we should be talking about is the fact that it's more complex than that, but it's actually about the everyday work of the council. We already have a very clear set of priorities as a council, and I think we have to get into place, and it's a cultural change that's required to do this. We have to get into a place where actually every opportunity we see, whether we're councillors or a member of staff, is about promoting and advocating on behalf of delivering those particular priorities. So when officers are at national group meetings, they are there fighting the corner, if you like, for the priorities of Dumfries and Galloway. We've got to get that mindset put in place. It's not just about reacting to something and picking a subject. It's actually about building it into the business plans, and it's about everyday work of the staff actually delivering those business plans. And a key part of that is effectively fighting the corner for Dumfries and Galloway. I think it's not only implicit in the document about the role of members, it's actually quite explicit in terms of page 206. There's a very clear reference there to the role of elected members. But it's at every single opportunity. When we are sitting in a meeting with a government minister, we constantly know what the council's priorities are. We've got a very, very clear set of priorities now and a set of commitments to the council, and we need to be pushing them at every opportunity. I think, Leader, your point at the start, I think, was a very valid point, that in the past, what happens in Dumfries and Galloway, and still sadly happens to an extent, is that one community tries to pick a fight with another community. One community decides it's another community's fault, that everything that's wrong in one community is some other community's fault. Frankly, we don't necessarily get that in the Highlands and Islands. They speak very often, despite the diversity of that area, very often speak with one voice. And I think you're right to say we do well to learn from the Highlands and Islands. We need to be fighting far stronger and more effectively for Dumfries and Galloway. And I think far too often, maybe sometimes we fight amongst ourselves as communities. But I think it's a first class piece of work. And what we now need to do is to embed this in the culture of the council amongst every single member of staff.
Well, just on the back of that, and we've heard today that BT are going to advertise for 120 jobs. Maybe we should be lobbying and advocating for some of those jobs to be based in Dumfries and Galloway.
I think members have made a good point, and I think Colin's absolutely right. We have been, I suppose, a bit reactive rather than preemptive. And I take heart in Donna saying that you do work with the MSPs and what have you, but we need to utilise. We hear a lot through COSLA, which doesn't always get back to us as members. We have representatives who attend, and we get sort of early views of things at COSLA, which could perhaps be reacted upon it if necessary. We need to keep an eye on things while they're going through the bill system in the Scottish Government, the select committee sort of stages as well, because if something is going to really directly impact on our area, it's far better that we get wind of that before it is enacted as a bill, and then we're on the back foot. And certainly there's plenty of information out there about what proposals are coming forward, and if they're going to impact us, we can lobby at the stage before they're enacted, and hopefully maybe some of those things won't be enacted at all on the back of that. So, good report there.
Ronnie?
Yeah, Colin stole a lot of things I was going to say. There's two things I wanted to add. Was if you look at 317, it more or less captures everything that everybody's been saying. And Colin made the point about embedding. What I'd like to see, Chair, so that it is on the radar, is if you look at the way the format of the papers are printed or produced, it has governance and impact assessment. I'd imagine, and there's an issue coming up at full council where I think the same thing would apply for the anti-poverty strategy, that, when you're going through that, we get governance advice, make sure it's all right, and we get impact. And it should also be, do we need to lobby and so forth. And if it was in there, then there's a discipline built into the way that the papers are delivered. And then from a member's point of view, we can see that the officers have had a look at that with, so it stacks up against our policy. I make that suggestion.
Fine. Yep. No. Okay, can we go to the recommendations? We've considered, can we agree 1 and 2?
Leader.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Well done, good piece of work. Okay, if we can go on to item 15, which is unacceptable actions policy update. This report provides members with a refreshed unacceptable actions policy. The policy now makes provision for certain exceptional matters to be considered by members. These actions and behaviours of an individual will have been so extreme that there will be a risk to staff. Clearly, we need to operate in an open and transparent way, and this has led to the preparation of operational procedures which are contained within the appendix to the report. I would also emphasise that in the vast majority of cases, interactions between service users and general public and council staff and elected members are positive, and we are only talking about a very small minority of individuals here. Martin is here to deal with any questions, members.
Just on a sort of administrative viewpoint, I think if you're going to have 5 members, sometimes if your declaration is interest, etc., because these things tend to happen quickly anyway, could I maybe suggest that you have 7 members and pern 5 from 7? That way, if there is anybody with a conflict, because what you really do, if you operate the same way as the local review body or the licensing boards or the employment appeals, where you pern so many councillors from a fixed number, all you have to do is to indicate to the 7 members that this is a particular case, this is who's involved. If they then have a declaration of interest, you can take out anybody who's got an interest. If all 7 are available, you just pick 5. And that way you're hopefully always going to have 5 there. You've got your quorum of 3. And I think that would allow representation from every group in the council as well. 2 for the administration and 1 from each other groups. I think that would cover all the bases.
There is another way. You've got the recommendation is 5. If we have 5 panel members and you have nominated substitutes, then if the people can't make it, then the substitutes can't stand in. So it keeps the committee mobile. So I think 5 members and 5 nominated substitutes is another option. Members.
I think that would have been my suggestion.
Okay, Andy.
In the interest of consistency, should this not be in proportionality? And I would actually suggest Tom's 7 in proportional and the group leaders nominating from their group.
You can pick any number and make it proportional. The recommendation is 5. The proportionality could be in that as well. And then you can, within your groups, you can nominate whoever is the substitute. Members?
Chair, would this not be one where you wouldn't have proportionality? I wouldn't say it was actually a political decision. It's more members deciding on an issue at a time, similar to a licensing panel where it's not political. So I think if there's 5 members willing to go on, and there are substitutes from this committee that can go on as well, that's the way it should be picked.
Right. The next thing would be if, if we can nominate members. Okay.
I'll kick off then, and I'll nominate Ted Thompson and also Ronnie Ogilvie, a couple of members to start.
Okay, I'm going to substitute on that. And Jeff, maybe? He's looking kind of lost in that. Gail?
Thank you, Leader. I would nominate Jill Dykes and Patsy Gilroy as a substitute.
Okay, Jim?
And I would go as substitute, yes.
Need one more?
Nominate Rob Davison. And I'll sub if need be. Just one question, a governance question. If we're on the appeals and everything else subcommittee, could there be seen to be a conflict at any stage?
That's not my understanding. I can assure members there would be no conflict in that situation. Questions well asked.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? So can we've approved the unacceptable action policy when, sorry, Jane, sorry.
Actually tried to get in, sorry. No, the question on all of this was, it wasn't clear to me, and it would have been helpful, the changes that have been made with respect to the previous, because you trawl through it, and it would have been there and useful to have seen what the changes were, because I don't know what the changes that have been made are. It's just a typo on 1.5. The policy does not undermine. I think it means undermine. That's on 1.5. And my question was that the Council considers the persistent contact to be unacceptable when it takes up what the Council regards as being a disproportionate amount of time and resources. Where is the... How is that... Who decides that?
I think it'll be an individual by individual case. And what, Martin?
If councillors turn to the process map on page 243, which is on the first page of the annex to the appendix, there'll be a trigger event. That could be a cumulative over maybe many months to many members, or it could be something that happens and needs immediate action. There'll be a risk assessment taken then by the manager of the individual that's witnessed or subject to this unacceptable behaviour. In terms of the decision sits with the monitoring officer. So it's really the monitoring officer needs to decide at that point, based on what sanctions are being proposed by the impact assessment and the risk assessment, as to then whether it warrants a panel to meet, and if it warrants a panel to meet, whether it's appropriate for that panel to be member-led or officer-led. So we're talking about a few exceptional cases, and even within these few, normally, officers, I think, would be the appropriate way to deal with trying to encourage a change in behaviour. And there's examples in the further annexes of the kind of letters and unacceptable behaviour agreements that we might try and encourage an individual to take up to moderate unacceptable behaviour. In the unlikely event or in the extreme event, then it would be to call the members. So the decision would be made by the council's monitoring officer.
Okay, can we again go back to the recommendations? Can we approve the revised policy? We've considered the membership and we've got members. Yeah, thanks. Item 16 is the duty to prevent people from being drawn into terrorism. This report outlines to members the arrangements in place within Dumfries and Galloway to prevent people being drawn into terrorism. I understand work is underway to finalise a code of practice for councils in relation to this activity, and this will emphasise the importance of joint working through having a shared awareness and understanding of the risk of radicalisation in the area. Members? Can we go to the recommendations? Can we note, and we've assured of the adequacy of the approach, and we've assured of the adequacy of the collaborative approach in Dumfries and Galloway, and 4, we note. (17) is the National Centre for Resilience, the progress report. Members will recall in August last year, the Council welcomed the announcement of the Scottish Government to establish Scotland's first National Centre for Resilience in Dumfries and Galloway. It was certainly my understanding this was both in recognition of our national best practice in resilience as well as a commitment to providing new job opportunities within our region. Whilst I acknowledge the progress that has been made since that time, it simply doesn't go far enough. And I have to say the report is certainly right to highlight that there is a need for the Scottish Government to renew the impetus for this national initiative, and I understand this is acknowledged by them as consultees to the report. I am committed to ensuring I secure at all times the best possible deal for our region, and I'll continue to take all reasonable steps when it is in the interest of the people of our region. It would be my additional recommendation today that we request an urgent meeting with the Scottish Government Minister for Environment, Climate Change and Land Reform, that's Aileen MacLeod. The purpose of this meeting would be to have a clear indication of the exact timescales for establishing the centre and recruiting people to these jobs. I would hope that all members would support this additional recommendation, and if we do accept that, I'd be willing to lead the delegation. Andy?
Leader, agree with your sentiments, and this is the first, I would suggest, the new lobbying policy we've just previously agreed.
Anyone? Fine. Sorry? I can't hear you. You're not using your mic. Okay, can we note the progress made and agree the additional recommendation? Thank you. I have no other business. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.